This video is basically for message. Basically, it's a message for the people of Ukraine, and I feel extremely sorry. I have my heartfelt sympathies to what the Ukrainian people are undergoing, and my heart goes out to them, and I feel sorry for them. I have made this video to convey my message. Now, what the narrative is being given in the media all over the world is a Western media narrative, which I feel is not the correct narrative and neither a correct perspective of what actually and how actually it has all happened and who is actually responsible for whatever is happening in Ukraine. Now, my perspective is different from whatever is being peddled in the Western media and the social media, and in fact, I feel sorry that the Indian media is also peddling the Western media narrative. Now, my perspective is entirely different with regards to this conflict. I feel the person who is responsible, equally responsible for this conflict, is the government of Ukraine. The government of Ukraine is equally responsible for what is happening in Ukraine right now, and they cannot be absolved from their responsibility for whatever is being faced by the people of Ukraine, and it's something very terrible which is happening. Now, I am going to give the people of Ukraine a perspective which is my perspective and which is a message to them that it is very important that whom you select as your leader. The leadership selection, whether through democratic means or otherwise any other means, is very, very important. And the people of Ukraine have to play a very important role now onwards, that they select a leader who it takes them on the right path. Now, the current leadership of Ukraine has not taken the Ukrainians on the right path. Basically, the present president of Ukraine is a political novice, and being a political novice, I am very sure he would have had very good advisors who would have advised him, but I don't know whether he has listened to their advice or not. Even if you're a political novice, then definitely in any government there are advisors who shows you the right path, and it is for you to decide and take that right path. Now, if you have overruled that right path, then your political naiveness again will make the people of the country suffer. A leader is one who learns from the history and takes the right perspective from the history. A good leader is one who knows and who appreciates the geopolitical situation, geopolitical security situation in the interest of his country. Now, the present leadership of Ukraine has not done it. He has been unable to read the history in the right perspective, and he has been unable to appreciate the geopolitical situation, and this is what has happened, and this is the result of that. Now, if the Ukrainians, the people of Ukraine are hearing me, they may feel that I am supporting Russia and I am against Ukraine. Let me tell you very frankly, neither I am supporting Russia nor I am against Ukraine. This is my very sincere perspective of this whole conflict, and please do hear me till the end, because it will give you an idea that you are very, very important as the citizens of Ukraine to select a correct leader. Now, coming to history, what history has been ignored by the Ukrainian leadership. If you see the history of the Western world and especially USA, they since last 80 years, if you see, they have never fought a war in their own land. After the Second World War, they have never fought a war in their own land. That is that is a fact. Now, secondly, the USA as a country has a policy of use and throw. The history is replete with example where they have used the country and they have then left the country in turmoil. Whether you see Syria, you see Poland, you see Iraq, you see Afghanistan, Vietnam, South Korea, there are n number of examples where you have seen what USA has done and USA and its allies have done. So this is the second aspect of history. First is they have never fought a war in their own land. They have always gone in some other country to fight a war. Now, which is an easier war to fight, because when you fight in some other country like in Afghanistan, you are not destroying your own infrastructure, you are not hazarding the life of your own people. The only people who are being put to hazard and life risk is your army, and they are supposed to do that. That is their job. So it's an easier job. Now, in case of Ukraine, now as I said, the Ukrainian president has been a political naive, and he novice, and he has not understood this history. He has overestimated his friendship with USA and its allies. That is the problem. He has overestimated. He thought army of US, the army of the NATO, army of the Western world will stand next to his border and fight Russia, which is not the case. He should have seen history. They have never done it before. Since last 80 years, they have not done it in last 80 years. If they have not done last 80 years, they are not confident. They are not confident of fighting a war in their own land. They are only taken a war in some other country's land, and that too in a country which was incapable of launching an attack on USA or its allies, whether it was Iraq, whether it was Syria, whether it was Afghanistan, whether it was Vietnam. Now these were the countries who were not capable of launching an attack from their land on the American land or the Western allies' land. But in this case of Ukraine conflict, USA is very much aware if they step inside Ukraine, Russia is capable of launching an attack in USA as well as in any of the allies of USA. So they are not confident. They are apprehensive of this kind of war. So the leadership of Ukraine should have understood this from history. So that's the biggest, one of the biggest mistake made by the Ukrainian president. The other aspect is the history of USA and its allies is a use and throw policy. They use the country for their own benefit and then they leave. Their business, their interest, their policy is only to make money. Wherever the money is to be made, USA will be there. If you see, there was no conflict going anywhere after the Afghanistan conflict. So the USA's armament companies, the companies who makes arms, they are not making business. So they have to find a place where they can make business. And USA has always been interfering in Asia or any other part of the world wherever they can create conflict. And once you create a conflict, your companies, armament companies, they make money. Is the biggest armament companies are one of the biggest companies of USA. So there was no conflict after Afghanistan anywhere, and they found a puppet in the form of Ukrainian president and they used him. And still, like a puppet, the Ukrainian president is towing the line of USA and the Western world. USA has got two puppets in the Asian continent in the form of Israel and Pakistan. They have used them to create conflict in the Asian continent. Now they are using the Ukrainian land to create a conflict in that area. Once the conflict is already there now, if you have read the news, the countries around in European Union, they are bolstering their defense system. So where will they get all these arms from? From USA and the Western world. So they will make money on them. So they are creating a fear in that whole area so that the countries there, they spend in defense. That is the aim, and they are fulfilling that aim. They are putting sanctions on Russia. Now I was talking about their policy is use and throw. Now they are sanctioning Russia left, right and center. They have put n number of sanctions on Russia. Now my counter to this is, when the pandemic happened, did the USA sanction anybody? The number of people who have died in pandemic is more than 60 lakh. I mean to say 60 million. 60 million people have died. Sorry, 6 million people have died. I correct myself, it is 6 million people all over the world approximately. 6 million people have died all over the world, which is not a small figure. But whom did the USA sanction in this case? Was anybody held responsible for it? Nobody. Because USA had no reason to sanction here anybody, because there was no money to be made anywhere. There was no arms involved there. There was no oil industry involved in the pandemic. So where to make money? The money was to be made in the vaccines. So the pandemic has to continue. So USA's interest was the pandemic should continue so that their pharmaceutical companies can make money, and that is what they are doing. So this is the policy of USA and the Western world, to make money. For them, there is no friend. There is no friendship. Friendship is to that extent to make money. And it is very important how you choose a friend. That's the mistake the Ukrainian president made. He chose a wrong friend. They are not friends of anybody. USA and its allies are nobody's friend. If I feel sorry that if the Ukrainian president didn't learn from the history, but he had a live example in front of him, he should have learned from that. but he has not learned till now. I'll give you that example. I'll remind you about that example. I am reminding the Ukrainian people about this example. When Ukrainian president sought the aircraft for bolstering his air defense, he sought the aircraft from NATO and USA. USA said, and in fact I was surprised that the Ukrainian president asked for the Russian made aircraft, which he said his pilots are confident of flying. I don't know why his pilots are not confident of flying any other aircraft. Now Russian origin aircrafts are with Poland. So USA told Poland, please give aircrafts to Ukraine because they require it. Poland said, we'll give the aircrafts, but we'll transfer it to USA, and then USA can transfer it to Ukraine. The moment Poland said that, because Poland learned it from history. Poland has been used and thrown by America before also, by the Western world rather. So they have learned from history. They didn't want to take a direct conflict with Russia. So they said, okay, USA, you take it and you give it to Ukraine. USA said bluntly no. Why? Because they were scared that Russia will take the war to their land. The Ukrainian president should have learned from this example again, but he has failed to learn from it. Coming to seriousness of the Western world in giving European Union membership to Ukraine, you can see the seriousness with which USA and the European countries accord to it. The example, I can give you the press conference which Vice President of USA had with along with Prime Minister of Poland, when Vice President of USA was asked whether they are ready to take Ukrainian refugees. He laughed it off. So this is the seriousness they accord to Ukraine and its people. On the other side, when the whole of Europe met some time back, they had a meeting in France, and when the some European leaders were asked about the fast tracking of membership of European Union for the Ukraine, he said, how can you do it? It is not something which can be done in months or in days. It takes years. So this is the seriousness they accord to the Ukrainian people and Ukraine, because your president has chosen wrong friends. So this is the result, and he is failing to understand. He is getting emotionally charged up by the Western media and social media who are making him into a superman. He is getting emotionally charged up and taking all the wrong decisions which are benefiting USA and the Western world. He is failing to understand they are using him. He has become a puppet in their hands. He is towing the line of the Western world. The Western world, USA wants to make this area into an area like you have Afghanistan in Asian continent, to create conflict, and Ukraine will become another Afghanistan. I'll tell you how. The Ukrainian president is exhorting, he's calling people from all over the world to come and fight in Ukraine against the Russian army. He's arming his own citizens from 18 to 60 years of age. This is a very, very wrong decision. People feel it is a very bold and very brave and patriotic decision. It is not. You have to understand, you are fighting an army which is a professional army. These civilians cannot fight. If you go into street fights, you will land up in creating Ukraine and forming Ukraine into another conflict zone, and a country which is perpetually in conflict amongst its own people. How it will, I will explain you. Now these people who are coming to Ukraine to fight, these civilian people, whether from outside Ukraine or within the Ukraine, when they are armed and they stand in front of the Russian army. Situation one is the civilians standing in front of Russian army armed, and unarmed civilians standing in front of Russian army and tanks. Who is more powerful, you decide. Don't you think the Russians will think twice before firing on unarmed citizens who are standing against them in the streets? And do you think it will be easier for Russians to fire on the armed citizens or not? It will be. The Russian army will find it easier to fire at these civilians who are armed and standing in front of them, and they'll think twice before they fire it on these civilians who are unarmed. So the Ukrainian president is making his citizens weak. He is not making them strong by giving them arms. Please understand that. And what is the other implication of this? What is happening now? The Russian president is sending conscripts and his mercenaries to fight in Ukraine. Now, can you morally stop him? He'll say the Western world is sending civilians to fight against me, and the civilians are being armed. So what is wrong if I send my mercenaries and my conscript to fight? He'll say that. What are the implications of this? The people who are coming in Ukraine at the request of Ukrainian president to fight, they'll be all coming through legal border with their papers and all, they'll be all accounted for. But these mercenaries and conscripts who will come, they'll be coming through porous border without any documentation, without anybody knowing. Now imagine a situation once the conflict ends, they will be there in Ukraine and they'll be creating trouble in Ukraine, and Ukraine will become an unstable country. All these conscripts and the mercenaries of Russia will be there as Russia's men to fight against you, hiding. You will not know how many are there. So you are making your own country unsafe. This is your president's doing. Please, I request the citizens of Ukraine, if they are hearing me, please see that you choose the right leaders and you give the right advice to your leaders and give support to them in their right decisions. This is a wrong decision. The other biggest mistake done by the Ukrainian president, being a political novice, is that he has failed to understand the geopolitical situation. What does it mean? It means, how can he think that he can join NATO and allow the US and NATO missiles to be dotted along his 2,000 kilometer border with Russia? Do you think Russia will ever allow that? Do you think Russia will ever allow the NATO and USA's missiles to be put all along the 2,000 kilometer border? Russia will never allow. Please understand, Ukraine can never think of joining NATO because Russia, that is against the Russia's security. Russia will never accept it. Imagine a situation if the California state of USA, which had been independent for years together, which is a coastal state, and suddenly one day they have decided that we will join Russia. Will USA allow that? US administration will say, please, you are independent, remain independent, but don't join Russia, because the moment you join Russia, you are putting Russia at my border, at my doorstep. Same is the situation here. Did the Ukrainian president understand this geopolitical situation? No. Please, you have to understand, a good leader is one who understands the whole situation as a whole and takes the decision in the interest of his country. Ukrainian president has not taken these decisions in the interest of his country, and he is getting carried away by the hype which the Western media and social media is creating him, making him a hero, a Superman. He is not a Superman. He is destroying his country. This is not bravery. This is, I would say, foolhardiness. It's a foolishness to destroy your own country in this way. Every day of war is pushing Ukraine economy and infrastructure years behind. Already this more than 21 days of conflict has pushed, I feel, Ukrainians' infrastructure as well as economy more than 3-4 decades behind. Where are you going? Please understand, you are pushing yourself in the hole deep and deeper. So the Ukrainian leadership has to understand the history. They should interpret the history correctly and they should take the right decision. It is not a right decision to fight. Bravery is not in fighting now. Bravery is to stop this. Other aspect I will ask, since this message is for the Ukrainian citizens, did at any given time when the Russians were amassing their troops at the border, the Ukrainian president think of calling up directly Russian president and discussing with him what the problems were? Did he do that? I have not heard. If he had done, I think he would have stopped this conflict from taking place. Did the friends of Ukrainian president, USA and other Western allies advise him to talk to the Russian president? After the conflict started, did at any given time the friends of Ukrainian president advise him, please talk to Putin directly, either through video conferencing or whatever means, and discuss with him how we can end this? Has he done it till now? Why he has not done? If he has done, that's good. He needs to do more. But if he has not done, why he has not done? What is harm in talking directly to the Russian president? because he's not been given right advice. Otherwise, advisors, if he has been given those right advice and he has not adhered to it, again it shows his political noviceness. So this is the reason why Ukraine is suffering. He has failed to see the suffering of his people, his country's women, children. They are suffering every day, and he is playing into the hands of the Western world. He has become a puppet in their hands. They are using him. He is failing to realize that he is being used. He has not learned from the history. I gave you so many examples. Now coming to sanctions. Now if the Western world was serious about the sanctions, I think it should have been done uniformly by everybody. What has everybody done? Everybody has not done anything. They are just doing whatever is convenient for them to do. They have not done justice to the sanctions. USA said they are not going to import gas and oil from Russia, but the European countries are doing it. USA imports only 8% of their requirement, but the European countries are importing 40% of their requirement. Have the European countries, whom the Ukrainian president considers them as friend, have they stopped? They have not stopped. So what kind of friends they are? They are friends of fair weather. They are not friends. Trust me, my message to the Ukrainian citizens, please understand, the US and Western world are nobody's friend. They are only for themselves. There's a small saying that in politics, there are no friends and there are no enemies. There are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies. There are only permanent interests. This is the basics of the politics. The Ukrainian president has not understood this basics of the politics. The other thing I will explain, the other aspect which the policies which the Western world follows. Now they are not friends among themselves also. The latest example is the submarine deal with the Australian government cancelled with the French government. This deal was of millions and millions of dollars. Australia cancelled this deal with France because friends of France, UK and USA had entered into another deal with Australia for transfer of nuclear technology for submarines. So these are the friends you are talking about. Their friends are also not friends. France was annoyed when USA and UK did this, when they could convince Australian government to cancel the deal of France and Australia. So these are the friends you are dealing with. They are not friends. They are not friends among each other. The European countries and USA are not friends among each other. They have their own interests. As I said, there are no permanent enemies. There are no permanent friends. There are only permanent interests in politics. So these are the kinds of friends you have. Another example I'll give you. Latest, Mr. Maduro, who is the Venezuelan president, he was considered an autocrat and he was considered an enemy of democracy. USA consider itself as the flag bearer of democracy in this world. USA, I am repeating, USA considers itself as the flag bearer of democracy in this world. They swear by doctrines of democracy and everything. They said Maduro, we will never deal him. Venezuelan oil is not devil's oil, we will not buy. But now, latest, after the Russian oil stopped coming to USA and their gas prices started rising, now President of USA has sent his diplomats to Venezuela. Now suddenly Mr. Maduro, who was an autocrat and a devil, has become a democrat who can help USA in oil and gas. Similarly, Iran was considered state who is after nuclear weapons and they need to be sanctioned. It was sanctioned also by USA and Western world. Now the USA is sending their diplomats there also for oil and gas. So these are the policies of the Western world. They have no policies. They talk something, they do something. So my message to Ukrainian citizens is, please select a good leader for yourself. Don't select leaders based on your emotions. Don't get carried away by the Western media. Western media and social media are all controlled by USA. So they peddle their narrative which is in their interest. They are not bothered about any other interest in any other country. That is their narrative. I am an Indian, I'll give you an Indian example also. This is the history of India, just one example from Indian history. I just want to quote here so that you know how USA and the Western world is and how Russia is. In 1971 war, when India was supporting Bangladesh for their freedom because of the atrocities of the Western Pakistan, now Pakistan, they were genocide in East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, and India was supporting to liberate them. The fleet of USA 1971 I am talking about, with the aircraft, nuclear aircraft carrier, the fleet of USA was in the Bay of Bengal, and the fleet, the British fleet was in the Arabian Sea. They had come, they were sailing out, they were coming towards the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea to intimidate in India not to do what they were doing. To call USA as a democratic country and friends of democracy, when India was helping a country for democracy to be established in some country, they were there to intimidate India. And the Prime Minister of India just gave one phone call to Russia. See, I am doing something which is to save a country, and here is USA and British fleet coming to intimidate me. Russia on one phone call sent their nuclear submarine fleet, and the submarine fleet came and surfaced and stood between India and USA fleet, and the USA and UK fleet had to retreat. This is what Russia is. So you can decide whom you want to be friend, it is your decision, but then friendship is the way, it is on equal standing, it is equal give and take, it cannot be one-sided. But right now the Russian interests were not taken under consideration by the political leadership of Ukraine. You have to understand geopolitical situation. You had given up arms, nuclear arms in 1994 because of Budapest memorandum, but that was the geopolitical situation there. You can say in the hindsight, if we had not given up nuclear weapons, this would have not happened. But then you have to understand geopolitical situations are not static, they are dynamic. That's why certain agreements which you have entered into, whether it is Budapest memorandum of 1994 or the Minsk agreement or whatever agreement which you may say and crib about the Western world has not honored or Russia has honored, but those are all done at that time. And geopolitical security situation being dynamic, it has changed over a period of time. Now NATO has moved closer to Russia, and Russia doesn't want any further advancement of NATO for their own security. You have to understand that. So my request to you is to please convey to your president to stop this war immediately. Every single day of war is pushing the Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian infrastructure years behind. There's total destruction. I'll give you a small example. It may not be a perfect example. You know you enter a boxing bout and you know that boxer against you is better skilled, more powerful, but friend of yours who's a referee, he says, don't worry, I'll see that you win this bout. You enter the bout and you start fighting. You're getting punched left, right, center, and you are realizing that your so-called friend referee is not helping you. Now what to do? You keep fighting, you're thinking that the referee is going to help you and you are going to win. Finally, you land up in a situation that you're getting battered left, right, center. I think in such a situation, it's not bravery to fight now. Bravery is not in fighting. When you land up in such this situation, bravery for that boxer is to get knocked down and save himself, save his life for another day to become a better boxer, to become more strong and come back and fight that strong boxer again, rather than getting punched and rather than getting killed in the bout and losing life forever. So that is the situation Ukraine is in. I think your president needs to realize the referee, so-called referee of USA and Western world are not going to help you. Please understand, just arming with giving you arms is not a help. That is not going to help you. It's basically a money making racket for them. They are making money on you. Their armament industry is making money on you. Their oil industry will make money on you. Their other companies will make money on you. I will be very keen to know the amount of money which the Western world has invested in giving you arms. Will they invest the same amount of money once the conflict ends in building up your infrastructure? I want to hear that from that side. I would love to hear how much they are going to help you in building up your infrastructure in your country back again. I am very keen to know that. So please understand that your president is a political novice. He needs to learn. If he has been given good advice, he has, I believe, not heard that good advice. He has landed in a situation where he is being used, and he is being by the USA and the Western world, and he is towing their line, which is to their benefit, not to the benefit of the Ukrainians and the citizens of Ukraine. My heart goes out to all of you, and my sincere sympathies and to all of you. I know there are a lot of Ukrainians in India and Goa where I stay. If they hear this video and they find any substance in it, please try to pass it on to share it with the other Ukrainians and citizens, so that you know how the Western world, as per my interpretation, this is what the Western world is. If you believe in it, please do share it. I have a YouTube channel called Let's Wake Up. I hope your president and you all wake up and smell the rat and realize how the Western world is using you. They have used the Asian countries. They have done the same in all the Asian countries. Here they have carried out destruction, created fights so that their armament industry can prosper, so that the countries around the conflict zone can bolster their defense and buy their arms. That is what they are doing in your side of the world, and this is their main policy. Policy is use and throw, use and throw. Read the history, that is there existing everywhere. USA believes in use and throw policy. So please share this video, and I hope the Ukrainian president wakes up and does the right thing for his country. I'll end this video for the people of Ukraine by giving you a small statement that false hopes are worse than fears. The so-called friends of Ukrainian president, they have given him false hope. So this false hope is worse than living in fear, and because fear is also a positive in the sense it makes you learn to become stronger. So I hope that the Ukrainian president wakes up, and the citizens of Ukraine, after seeing this video, if they feel there is something right in this, also wake up and realize the false narrative of the Western world. Thank you.